world of lies. You are listening to the John H. Project.
Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one.
You found it. You're here. You're headlong down the runaway train that is the Anomic Age, and I am your host, John H., hailing proudly from the coastal plains of the Old North State. I'll be your tour guide this evening as we dip into the paranormal once again. I'm excited about it, and I won't belabor the points as I usually do, but I will direct you over to anomicage.com. If you've not already done so, please like all the likes, subscribe to all the subscriptions, paypal.me/anomicage, patreon.com/anomicage as well. Free iPhone app, free Android app. Subscribe by email link, free newsletter. It's all there at anomicage.com. We got a great guest today, so I won't do my usual talk as I sometimes belabor and get off track here. We got Sharon Day with us in the Anomic Age today. Sharon is a screenwriter, producer, popular blogger of ghost hunting theories, and the author of 24 books. She grew up in an actively haunted home that was a Civil War hospital for both the North and the South during the war. That experience fueled her passion for all things unexplained, as well as a keen skill for psychometry, I believe, physical objects moving. She grew up as well with a great sense of humor, and her thinking outside of the box and questioning everything really brought her where she is today. No subjects are off limits, which is perfect for this show. She gets into ancient civilizations, giants, quantum physics, aliens, Bigfoots, treasure hunting, urban exploration. Oh man, you're talking my language now. And we already talked a little bit about horror movies, or spook movies, as my grandmother used to call them here in the South. So we got so much to talk about today, and I'm so thankful for your time, Sharon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me on. Love to talk about this stuff.
And it's amazing. I didn't even realize the urban exploration was in the Vitae there until I read it a second, third time. I was like, oh my gosh, we got so much to talk about. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it is a passion. Yep.
And we got to send people to your site as well, ghosthuntingtheories.com. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen for everybody to see, ghosthuntingtheories.com. So definitely a lot of good stuff there. I was just kind of perusing that last night, getting ready for the show, and there's a lot we got to talk about on this thing. It's beautiful.
Good.
So first time on the show, we got to kind of begin at the beginning, I guess. What got you into all this? Your bio touched on the Civil War hospital, but I mean, I feel like there's a whole lot there that really sparked your interest in this. I know there is.
I'm not a guest that'll say I've been doing this for 20 years. I literally was born into it. When I was born, long ago, I was born dead. I had no signs of life. And it took some time for them to get any signs of breathing, brain activity, heartbeat. And I think that might have left me with sort of a little bit of a foot on both sides. And I was born and raised in like you said, it was built in the 1750s as a fort against Indians. And later on during the Civil War, it was owned by Quakers, and it was taken over by the North and used as a hospital in Fairfax, Virginia. And they had built a fort on the property too, so there was a lot of battling there, which later on as I grew up, I did a lot of metal detecting and uncovered tons of artifacts that we showcased for the historical tours and such. But the house was also known as a very haunted location. The floorboards were still stained with the blood of the soldiers.
Jeez.
During the war, the South took it back and used it for the same purpose, so both sides had died there. And it was an extremely actively haunted place, and the land was haunted as well. And as a child, I would dig up artifacts and I would rush to my mom and I'd hand them to her and I'd be like, hey, this is James Fitzpatrick's. He lives in New York. He's a reporter, blah, blah. And I'd go on about like who had this object. And my mom would just shake her head like, oh, you're so cute. You're going to be a writer someday. Well, when the age of internet happened, I decided to look up some of the names and people, and I was completely accurate. So I had some weird skills. I think growing up in that atmosphere, being exposed to history, being atop of a running stream with a basement made of stone, it was a perfect haunting vessel. It just sort of held everything in. And as a child, I thought it was perfectly normal. Like, my older siblings, when we moved in, they knew about ghosts and they said, oh, it's haunted. That's scary. I was born in it. And I just thought that's the way nature is. And as I got older and went to friends' houses, spent the night, I didn't feel anything. And I couldn't understand I don't like this feeling of amnesia. There's nothing. I felt better and safer with the activity. But my parents had a really good attitude. They said, look, these soldiers died here and there's 5 kids growing up in this house. And who better to, they don't have their families anymore. What better than to guard children? They were parents and they love kids. And so their attitude helped to look at it in a way that most people don't look at it. They think of it as a surprise, a threat, potential possession or evil or demons. We didn't have any of that at all. It was a very friendly haunting, very kind of sad, a lingering sadness. But I observed as a child and started recording the sounds and stuff and asking, why is it active this month? It's not active the next month. Like, what changed? So really, ghost hunting theories later on in life became the obvious vehicle for me to say, let's look at these things differently. Let's not accept they don't know they're dead or they have unfinished business or that they're even souls. Let's just look at it like the phenomena and then, reverse engineer it, figure out where it came from and what it really is. And so that's kind of the attitude on ghost hunting theories. It started with ghosts. I encountered a Bigfoot. I encountered UFOs and aliens. So it expanded my curiosity into all subjects.
Is this all in the same location you encountered these different phenomena?
No, the ghosts were where I grew up. And actually, we had a summer house on the Chesapeake, and it was extremely haunted, too. And my book, Growing Up with Ghosts, covers my family and I's experience at Aspen Grove. And then my Vacationing with Ghosts book talks about the Chesapeake hauntings. But then when I moved west, I started encountering UFOs. Throughout my life, I've had what you would call alien gray encounters. I'm contactee. And then when I lived for a while in California, we hiked the Sierras all the time. And that's where I had my first Bigfoot experience. And I really didn't know anything. But back then there was no internet. And Bigfoot wasn't something popularly talked about. All I knew was one time in the theater, I saw the Patterson film. And I thought, great, there's some kind of gorilla running around our woods. And I assumed it was Washington State. So, I was hiking in the Sierras in California. And when I saw this, my first thought is maybe it's a hiker. But when it came out in the light and I saw it quite clearly, it definitely wasn't human. The proportions were totally off. The coloring changed from black. When it hit the sunlight, it was auburn. Its stride, the length of its arms, the length of its body, the muscles, everything was off. And I'm an artist of human figure, so I knew something was wrong. But I was a little confused at the time because all I knew was it was supposed to be a gorilla. This was not a gorilla. This was somebody related to us. And it wasn't in Washington State. This was California. So that left a constant question in my head. What are we dealing with?
Mm-hmm. Just to jump back on the ghost thing for a moment, you were doing basically like experiments with this. Did you get any like correlative factors? Is this something you experienced more in the summer, more in the winter? Was it based on humidity? You get that, what's that, the tape theory. You mentioned the proximity to water and the stone underneath, the old tape theory.
Make a good haunted vessel, you need certain ingredients. I think sometimes some areas are better at recording history or maybe making little time lapses where you're just grasping a moment that you thought is over. But I kind of think past, present, and future all together. But because we're in this, this mortal 3D form, it's hard for us to conceive of everything simultaneously. I think when we move on, we'll figure that part out. But the ghost thing, I remember as a kid, we had one ghost that it seemed like every night everyone had to be in bed I mean, if the last person was out partying, one of my teenage siblings, and they came home late, that person had to be in their room. And then we would hear these booted footsteps going up the stairs very clearly. And of course, old, ancient 200-plus-year-old floors, they creaked a lot. And so we would hear that. And one time I just decided to take my dad's tape recorder and sit on the stairs and wait. And I waited and waited. And then it started up the stairs. And I'm sitting there with the recorder going. This thing stepped on the step that I was on. I could actually feel the step bow from the weight, which was just so weird because this thing's in an energy form. How does it have weight? Mm-hmm. But it stopped. This was the first time I'd ever heard it stop on the stairs. It's like it knew I was there and I knew it was there. It sensed something different, which made me think maybe this isn't just a recording. And then it moved on. Well, of course, I go to school like 5th or 6th grade. I take the recorder. I'm like, I recorded it. Now, see, it was hard because our home was like the Munsters house. It was this creepy mansion on a hill with a lot of property, and everything around it was suburban tract houses. So growing up, the kids were terrified of our place. No one trick-or-treated there. Sometimes kids would dare each other to get on the property, but it was on the news all the time for the ghosts. So everyone was scared. So I play the recording. You can obviously hear these booted footsteps. And one of the kids is like, well, you just put your dad's boots on and made the sounds. And then it dawned on me at a very young age, this ghost detective stuff, I don't know how to prove it. Mm-hmm. And that's where I shifted. And I said, I don't need to prove it. It's an experience. And I tell people that all the time, please, if you're going to go, ghost hunting, don't take equipment. Don't even take a camera. Don't take anything. Just take you. Because there's nothing digital or electronic that we can use that can detect things like the human body can. And it may be because we actually have a soul. But we see and hear things all the time and cannot capture them. So go have the experience. You don't have to prove it to anyone. You don't have to prove they exist. No one's going to believe you, especially in a world of AI. No one's going to believe you. So, there is no reality anymore. So there's only experience. So have an experience. Don't be distracted looking at an instrument to tell you there's a ghost. You just missed a shadow person walking by. So be there. Use your senses.
I can't resist commenting on that one because what you said is strikes me so spot on with the world we live in. But there is no reality anymore. That is. I had a long conversation with Ben Hansen from Fact or Faked back when he was doing the show, and we had like a 4-hour conversation about everything. And he said ultimately it's frustrating. You show a video. Some people see the video and they think, because I saw it with my eyes, it has to be real. And then there's another contingency that says, well, there's a lot of video programs that can, so you really can't, Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, UFOs, don't try to prove it. Don't even try to prove it. You have to be present to experience it. And I think the reason I and others experience more than one paranormal is because we're just receptive. We don't have any motives. We're open. We observe things. We notice things. We seem like an open vessel that's open-minded. And so you get exposed to more paranormal. I've heard this, again, anecdotal, as I guess everything is. But, I've heard some people can be, staring at the same night sky and one person sees something and the other person looking at the same thing doesn't see it. It almost seems very individualistic. I guess like who it's revealed to, or maybe more to the point what you were saying, who has like that slightly different mojo, if you will, that can see that versus another person.
Well, I've said for years that consciousness is the key to so much. How UFOs are driven, how aliens do things without any apparent technology on their. They're not running around with the little devices like Star Trek. But they seem to make things happen. They can move a whole ship through an atmosphere, through transmedium, like anything, just using their minds. And I think as a people, we're starting to realize consciousness plays a big role in everything. And when you were asking about the ghosts, one of the things I observed as a kid was, wow, we had a lot of activity. What just happened? And I had to kind of sit and look through my notebook because I kept notes. I found that when people would move in or out of the house, it changed the milieu, it changed the chemistry, and people are a part of it. One of the quantum experiments that has people baffled is called the double slit experiment. And when they were shooting photons, the outcome of what they did when they shot them through these slots was it changed if you're observing the procedure. It's like it knows you're watching and it changes the outcome. And we see that with ghosts, with Bigfoot, with any of this. The minute we go trying to hunt it down and watch it, we can't get it. Our consciousness is critical. And I think Stephen Greer is doing a good job with his, CE5, the protocol for calling in UFOs. It's very open-minded, very, non-threatening, very receptive. And I was doubtful about it until I actually tried to call on a UFO, and I asked it what to do, and it did it. And that changed a lot for me. I realized we've got to work on what's going on in our heads, and I think this Disclosure Day discussion going on is really critical because they see we have the capacity. We don't have the practice for how to use our consciousness. We use it for evil, for greed, for bad thoughts about people. And I don't want to be I'm not one of those new age fluffy woo-woo people, but we clean up our thinking and we clean up our everything. Long time ago, I went into therapy dealing with the alien contact. And one of the things I learned was, the way you interpret something creates a feeling and then a reaction. So you get 4 people with a flat tire. One of them's dancing around, excited, worried, I'm going to be late for work, so now they're panicking. Yeah. Another person's thinking, well, this isn't a really good part of town. Now they're getting scared. So everybody, if you use logic to observe something and don't put any of your own absolutes and fears and, put it on trial, put it on trial, see if it's worthy. And then you get a logical conclusion. And logic it's not the answer to everything, but it takes the emotive part out of it. And if we're going to use our consciousness, we're going to have to learn to be in a more meditative level, just open vessel.
It's kind of funny you got on this same topic. I was talking to Grant Cameron on the last show, and I had no thought we were going to talk about consciousness, but we started talking about consciousness, and it's so spot on. I mean, if it's the Carl Jung thing or, the interconnectedness of us all, the 100th monkey, whatever you want to put on it, I think everybody kind of feels, a disturbance in the force, so to speak. I think we're all sort of on the people that, I'm trying not to be mean, the people that can feel, kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, it's collective consciousness. We are connected. I mean, obviously, we learn from near-death experiencers, too, that on the other side, everything is energy. It's all connected. Everybody's one. Everybody's in the zone. So if you have a soul, your soul's already connected. But the question is, are you so distracted by being a 3D mortal that you can't tap that soul? And that's the pathway. If you've ever had a day where out of the blue you start thinking about somebody you haven't seen in years, and then they email you that day, like, how does that happen? You start singing a song, you go in the next room, it's on the radio. Like that's when you're in the flow. And as a psychic, I mean, that's the place we dance.
And I think everybody is a lot more empathic than we might think we are. My daughter is super like that. And it's funny you mentioned that because a couple of nights ago, we had to go to like a bad section of town. And into the story, everything turned out fine. It wasn't a problem. But like on the way there, she asked me like, why do you feel uptight about this? Why are you concerned about this? And, she could feel my energy without me even speaking it. And I was like, oh yeah, well, here's why. But it's so spot on that I think we're all a lot more like that than we maybe like to think we are sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, when you tap into that, you tap into the, what you'd say, the Akashic records, like the all knowledge. It's a beautiful place, but we just have to grow as a people. And I think kind of what we're seeing with the alien interactions, I kind of feel like aliens don't just crash vehicles. It's like, here, let's throw one down and like to a toy to the dogs. Let's see what they do with it. They're testing. How are they going to handle this? So hopefully we pass.
What did you do to sort of like raise your own consciousness, or was it just kind of the collateral damage of everything you went through, from the ghost to the UFOs to everything? I mean, you went through some stuff, to put it nicely, and maybe that raised your consciousness, or was it already there even as a young child that you just kind of matrix honed it a little bit?
I assumed that it had to do with growing up in that environment where it was perfectly natural to see figures or hear things or things move. It just, to me, it was as natural as, you jump off your bed and you go to the floor because there's gravity. I assumed there's always, these are other ways of being. And I think probably ancient man, a lot of what people think is spiritual on their cave walls was really, they were interacting quite openly. And I think that experiment closed off to see what we would do if we weren't openly involved with others. But I do have a very early memory. When I was very young, I was probably about 4. And I woke up one night and I sat up in bed and I looked across the room and there was an alien gray. The alien gray was flanked by 2 tall whites. And in my kid mind, it also had like a stone on its forehead, like where the third eye is. And I thought of it as a crown. And I thought, oh, he must be a king and these are his guards. But there was nothing spoken between us, but the message was extremely clear to me. Basically, I gave you things that make you different, and you're going to go through a lot of life trials, but eventually you're going to start using those things I gave you. You have a mission, and you'll never see me again. And I remember as a kid feeling like sad because he was like a father figure in a way. Well, I tucked all that away until I was well into adulthood, and I started really using my skills. Now, I had gone through trials, and I had a lot more trials ahead. So apparently my mission wasn't ready yet, but I did get my DNA done. And what I found confounded me. I have 25 chromosomes, pairs of chromosomes instead of 23. And I looked at it, my 24th chromosome pair was empty. It had no proteins, no alleles. So I looked at the 25th, and it had all its proteins, and it had all its alleles, and it was not a replica of any other chromosome that I had. So I have some extra set of chromosome that I don't know what it's for. I don't know. But it's just another sample. But then as I got older and started realizing that others can't touch objects and know things, and have predictive dreams and do healings, and like I just had a wide variety of skills, and it became more and more clear that I'm different than everyone. But I was also in a situation in a marriage where my husband was atheist and didn't believe in anything at all, and did not want to hear about it, did not want me to talk about it, did not want me to use it. And so I tucked a lot of that away, afraid of it. It wasn't until I divorced him eventually that I started using the skills, and lo and behold, the Greys started visiting again. And the first time I was newly divorced, woke up, swung my legs over to go use the restroom, and there's an alien Grey right in front of me near my bed. It's probably 4 feet away. And I knew out of the corner of my eye there was something else, and I turned, and at the corner foot of the bed there was another one. And I just felt it. I turned, and at the foot of the bed was another. And then there was one on the opposite side of the bed. So I had 4 of them surrounding the bed. And collectively, the first thing, I mean, mind speak is a weird thing. It's exactly like being a psychic. You don't hear words necessarily. You get knowledge. And now you have to figure out where the knowledge came from. It's like coming into a party late in the middle of the story, and you got to figure out the story. So there's a lot of interpretive you have to do. So when you're mind speaking, you know what they feel or think. They're not thinking in words. They're just thinking in knowledge. So the first knowledge I got from them was, oh shit, she woke up. Because it's like they weren't supposed to, they wanted to bring me a message while I'm asleep. And what I got from them was, one of them to dispatch them to do this, told them she can't be paralyzed, which is true. I can't be paralyzed. So my first thought when I swung and I saw that first alien, my instinctive first thought was, don't stand up, you'll intimidate it, because I'm 5'8" tall. So I'm like, I don't want to scare this little person. And I felt that all of them relaxed intuitively, and they look very similar, very similar. The only tiny, subtle difference. Like if you have identical twins and one just seems slightly different. So they do have an emotional reaction. The emotional reaction is mostly from their intellect, warning them of things that could be dangerous. But I looked at the one at the corner of my bed, and we made this eye contact, and I don't know why I thought it, but I'm like, we're related, aren't we? And its eyes widened, like, oh crap, why'd you say that? And so I saw a light. I turned, and the one at the foot of my bed, this what I could only describe as a red-orange plasma light from its solar plexus area spread out, and it disappeared. It was gone. And it had nothing in its hands, no devices. They weren't carrying anything mechanical on them. But I did feel, what made me turn my head first was his energy got very centralized, very tight, very, if you're near somebody that's nervous and you can just feel that energy, it was like that 1,000 times over. So something chemical or electrical was happening with that one. It went away. And then after it went away, the one beside me went away. Same way, the one at the corner of the bed did. And I looked over, and the one on the other side of the bed, I could feel it like panicking, like it wanted so bad to make the light happen, but it needed to concentrate, which is, once again, consciousness. It turned away, and I remember crawling across the bed. I wanted to touch it because I couldn't tell if it was skin or some kind of a suit that's molded onto their body, but it looked like ultra suede. It was kind of interesting. And I'm reaching for this guy, and I remember when he turned around, just trying to concentrate or whatever, I'm thinking, dude, I can still see you. Like, turning around didn't make you go away. Yeah. And he just panicked. But then that light came, and that thing was gone. But I can tell you, when they left, the room temperature went way up for just like a second and a half. And then it went back down to normal. It smelled like ozone. I jumped out of the bed, looked out the, Arcadia door, looking, is there anything in the sky? Are there any lights? And then I turned the light on, looking on the carpet. Did they leave footprints? Checking out the whole apartment. But they had left me with a message, and the message was in what I call a zip file. They can give you a condensed amount of info, but it'll take you a day or two to slowly feel it release and know more and a little more and a little more. So the next day I knew what they had left me with was, you are using your skills, and your mission is coming. Mm-hmm. At the time I was a medical transcriptionist, working from home, typing medical reports. They literally watched my keyboard. If I went away for 2 minutes to use the bathroom, they're like, where are you? You're not keying. It was the most miserable job. Yeah, the whole industry changed. I went from I made about a quarter of what I used to make because they were having computers do voice recognition. And then I became an editor, and the computer screwed everything up. So I spent more time editing the computer than it would have taken to type it. So I wanted out of the industry. Well, I had just started doing some stock trading. And so one day I got frustrated. I was really tired. I had to get up super early in the West Coast to meet when the stock market opens to research. So I get up at like 4 a.m. and I was writing books, I was running my blog, and I was doing a full-time job. So I was done. And so one day I sat down and I just said, little gray people, whoever you are, whatever you want, I can't do it unless I can leave my job. So help me leave my job. Tell me a stock I can buy, make enough money to leave my job. So the next morning I woke up and I had these letters in my head, INO, INO, INO. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wait, I used to trade a stock called INO. And I went back and looked at it, and it was tasty. And I thought, well, let's try it. And so within 8 months, I had made plenty of money, left my job. Ironically, a week later, that company went bankrupt. So, so I was on, now I had full time that I could, well, not really full time because stock trading takes a lot of time, yeah. But I had a method to get out of that and to focus more. And I focused more and more. And then eventually the one from my childhood showed up. I woke up one night. I always know when they're there because I open my eyes and I'm wide awake and I have no reason to be this alert. Mm-hmm. There's somebody in the room. And I could see out of the corner of my eye a being, and I instinctively knew, I can't, all I can say is it's his energy. There's something different about each one. I knew it was the one with the crystal on his forehead from my childhood that said I would never see him again. So respectfully, I thought to myself, don't worry, I'm not going to turn my head. I'm not going to look at you.
Hmm.
And there was a pause there. And then basically he said, this is your mission. He gave me the information, which I had to put into words. And I actually used a word I've never even used before. I don't know why I interpret it with this word. The mission was open and close the doorway, find the schism between the worlds, open and close the doorway at will in front of witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's rubbish. Like, I can barely open a car door. And you want some psychic door, some worldly door, interplanetary world. What is this doorway? What is this schism?
Exactly.
I actually had to look up schism because I knew it had to do with a difference in something, but it actually means like two ideologies, like a Republican and a Democrat. They have a schism between them. So now that's getting even weirder. And it took me 2 days to get through that zip file he left me, but he left me a vision of how the world is and how the world might be. And it was very humbling and very troubling in some ways, because right now it's playing out. He showed me that in the past, long ago, when man was first basically intelligent or set to be intelligent, that man openly interacted with all kinds of things: Bigfoot, aliens, other worlds, other dimensions, godly figures, angelics, whatever you want to call them. And they thought it was perfectly normal. That's how they always lived. The moment they were born, sort of like I was born in a ghost house, and that was normal to me. So they had made a decision, whoever they are, and it sounded like collective gods or something, but they decided to stop the experiment, like, close the world. What would humans do if they thought that was all there is? Would they create a religion? Would they create these figures? How would they handle them? And so over the years, we've had now and then little drop-ins just to test individual humans. You're going to see a Bigfoot today,
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with it? And it also said a lot about us, because most people didn't want to report them because they'd be weird, which is the opposite of how it had been. Well, they showed me that we are going to be having continued interactions with alien-looking things and UFOs. And it's a test to see how, as a society of humanity, how we handle something other that we didn't know was there or we didn't want to acknowledge. If we don't handle it well, if we handle it with anger and terror, they would close our world off completely from everything. And that would also include the heaven experience where souls go.
Yeah.
So I feel a responsibility, but I still don't know exactly what that mission thing is. I'm like, come back just one more time. I'm stupid. Try to explain it more. Yeah. I don't know. But it was a really humbling picture. And now I see that is happening now with all the disclosure stuff. People are coming out. They're not afraid to talk about it. And I hope that makes it familiar to people. And when people actually realize, like with Bigfoot, they really, we're in their living room and we're shooting animals and camping and drinking, and they still won't bother us. Yeah. So I think we need to kind of look at it that way. The aliens are watching us, but they're certainly not. And I know there are abduction cases, and I don't know that they're handled well. I feel as if it's yet part of the experiment, to check us out, to see how we're advancing, to see what diseases we're developing from the way we're living, and, just kind of tap into our intelligence, our emotional state, our chemical state, our electrical state. But I think there's a more humane way it could be done.
Yeah.
In
probably.
which, they just need that little pen with a red light on it,
Sharon, is there a fan or anything on? I'm picking up like a low clicking sound on my end with your audio.
Yeah, there's a ceiling fan on.
That must be the clicking sound. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it going to mess you up to cut that off at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
See if I can figure out how to turn it off.
No problem. I'll plug your site while you're away. Definitely got to check it out. I got her information on the screen right now, ghosthuntingtheories.com, ghosthuntingtheories.com. And I can't say that enough because there's so much cool information there. If you think you're just going to go into one thing, I guarantee you'll find something you're interested in. I was looking at it just through the paranormal lens, and then we got to looking at it, and I was like, holy cow, you're into horror movies too. I love this stuff. That was
yes,
a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah, I worked my way up to the #1 ghost hunting blog in the world, and I think I'm number 6 or 8 for paranormal subjects. So, but it
That's
took 18
amazing.
years to get there. Yeah.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
got to
the
talk
horror.
about this one a little bit because I was so interested in this just
Okay.
from initially finding your work is the Grand Canyon. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I'm into all things ancient societies and just the obfuscation of what should just be the pedestrian archaeological knowledge until you start
Yeah.
looking into it and you realize, well, the Smithsonian, basically this non-governmental agency that has nothing to do with the United States, really controls everything in the United States.
Well,
You got
they
the
did a smart thing. They tied the
go ahead.
Smithsonian with the Department of Ethnicity.
Yep.
So when they knew they had to cover up some ancient Indian stuff around here, that was confusing, and they didn't know what to do with it because they obviously weren't Amerindians. Uh, they created this department that can basically squirrel it away. Now they have a law. If anything's ancient, it's handed to the local tribe, whether they lived there or it's related to them. They don't care. Just get it out
Mm-hmm.
of the way. Don't let the people see it. And I've come up with an actual protocol if people come across an ancient giant find, how to respectfully declare it and record it, while at the same time following where it goes once they hand it over.
Hmm.
So that's the key, to show the process. Yes, it does go missing, and that is a way that they can hide all this stuff. And I'm sure if the Smithsonian, if you took any of the tribes in there and let them run through their catalog of items that they have, they could claim everything in there. Anything old in the Smithsonian is apparently a Native American tribes. So they are breaking their own rule. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, the Grand Canyon find, I'm very intrigued by the ancient giants. I actually was in a covert Bigfoot research group studying language and psychic skills. And that's where it was during the peak of everyone wanting to kill a Bigfoot to prove it. So I just had to, as a closet archaeologist my entire life, I just had to say, okay, well, another way to prove them is to prove where they came from. Where they had to have ancestors, right? And the only other find in America of giant skeletons was the ancient giants. And then when you look at the tribal tales told of these other offensive people that were very big and they drove them off, and that they had already had massive advanced cities when the Amerindians first came to the continent. They came upon them. Now it sounds like my guess is that the population for humans is rapid and expansive and quick, and maybe it's not that easy for giants to breed. So they became outnumbered. They got driven away. They went in hiding. Well, who do we have in hiding that's really big right now? And where are they hiding? Oh, gee, I don't know, around ancient mound areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, duh. So, that took me on that trek. So the Grand Canyon, I was living in Arizona, and that one, there's a lot of Indian finds, or the giant Indians finds in Arizona, and so that kind of set me off looking. But Grand Canyon one, I was on a team, Crypto Four Corners, and they were actually sending a unit out to study where they thought it was this cave that this explorer G.E. Kincaid, he went down the Colorado in the early 1900s, and
Yeah.
he said as he was going down there, he had seen this cave up on the cliffside. So he climbed up there, and he said he found 30 yards of steps carved into the rock going to the cave entrance, which obviously showed at one time the water was at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, being a person who's extremely logical and curious, I thought the best way to prove the civilization is to prove the situation. Can we confirm what this guy said? And when you look at the Grand Canyon, I did a lot of different studies of different areas, different giant finds and stuff, and the conditions that tended to draw giants in, and that most of them did use waterways. They lived on rafts, a lot of them. A lot of the kind of life you see on Lake Titicaca now with the tribes, where they live on floating rafts. And so I looked at it, and there had been lava flows that had gone into the Grand Canyon, blocking it off and creating very high lakes. So that gave me a time period, and I looked for lava flows, so it narrowed the field a little more. And so I believe that every Indian legend has absolute truths in it, absolute truths. And why sometimes it sounds extraordinary, like some weeping mother became a rock mountain. No, we don't believe that happened. But the way that you orally pass a story down, I mean, think about your own family. I'm sure you've heard tales of great great grandpa, or you had this
Of
relative that
course.
did, but it's always the crazy the tales, right? So you want to pass a tale down about grandma and she loved to make jam. You don't say, Grandma Susan loved to make jam. No one's going to pass that down. But you just tell them that, you know, Grandma Susan loved to make jam out of children. That's getting passed down.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's how you do it. And so their oral traditions they're absolutely beautiful. And I think when you can have Navajo, code talkers helping us win a war, you need to really listen to their legends. They know how to hide those things. They know how to put them in there. So repeatedly they talked about these giants and driving them off, and they were offensive, they were cannibalistic, they were impossible to live with. And now we have a hidden people that will do anything to not be found.
Mm-hmm.
They're outnumbered. Yeah.
Well, there's so much to look at with the Grand Canyon, but one of the things, I mean, I haven't tried this, so I can't say that it's true or not, but I've heard that you can't even like fly a drone in the Grand Canyon or near the Grand Canyon. But I think that's pretty much true of all the federal parks in general. So what the heck are they hiding or so afraid of? If you can fly a drone in your backyard or a park or at a fireworks, going to have some fireworks here on the 4th, and there's going to be 1,000 drones up there filming this mess, but you can't go to this desolate canyon that spans 3 states.
It's very suspicious. There's a lot of layers to that. Our team that went out there, and other teams have reported this, they got chased off by an unmarked black helicopter that would not leave them alone. They knew exactly what they were trying to do there. There's many hundreds of caves in the Grand Canyon. Only a couple of them have been documented. Why didn't they document the other caves?
Mm-hmm.
Why? They block off whole areas you're not allowed in. There's just a lot of really suspicious behavior behind all of that. And so, like I said, I in the series, the Grand Canyon Mummy series on ghost hunting theories, there was several episodes that I did. And I even got, on Google Earth and said, let's look at all the conditions. There was a legend of, in 1930 in Utah, a giant came out of Johnson Canyon, met with the local Indians and said, I'm dying. Could you take me to where I want to be buried? And where he wanted to be buried was a mountain in Arizona. And it was at the tip of the Grand Canyon, basically. And it dawned on me, it was along a fault line, hurricane fault line. And that fault line runs up and down. Well, it also had millions of lava caves, or not lava caves, but tubes based on the faults that create caves in that kind of rock. So obviously it had all the conditions for what the Hopi called the ant people that lived underground.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me, these people were, this thing that G.E. Kincaid had found in the cave was a civilization of these grand mummies, and all of their treasures and all their seed catalog, everything, like they knew they had to hide there. So then that made me think, well, when did something happen there that people had to go underground and realize that we better collect our seeds, collect our animals, collect everything? What were they hiding from? And the closest I could get was either the meteor crater in Arizona. That was 50,000 years ago when that crashed in Arizona. But that would have been so devastating. Anything that could survive would have to go underground. Another thing was Mount Shasta in California, which often erupted about every 5,000 years. And those can be very devastating. So you want to protect your crops. You want to try to stay alive. You go underground. Now you meet the Hopi. You're the ant people. Like all of these things were making sense. So I took Google Earth. I went, followed the path where this Indian wanted, or this giant guy wanted to be buried. And then looked at the Grand Canyon, looked at the lava flows, and found the perfect place for this. Started zooming in, started looking around. And there's just so many possibilities there for where Kincaid found this cave. But what Kincaid had done was he took some of the artifacts, took them, went on a raft down all the way down to Yuma on the Colorado River, kept going. And when he was there, he sent these things off to Washington, where they promptly went missing within the Smithsonian. So after that, nobody could follow any of that information. It showed up in the Phoenix Gazette in 1909, the entire story. But people said, "Oh, that's just magazine trying to get attention." Well, it was the only news in the area. That was the news source. You don't put War of the Worlds broadcasts in your important news for your locals. So, but it all went missing, and people are still wanting to access and find that cavern or any of those caverns. I'm sure there's a cavern system that goes all the way up into Utah. These are people that when the water dried out in the West, they went underground. And Paiute said that in California, in Death Valley. They said there were these people, grand, big people that came in on ships back when there were lakes there. And those people were there, and they would go off and trade in their ships and come back. And then when it ran out of water, they went underground. And then they started flying in the air in silver discs. So isn't that interesting? And it's very similar. Some miners fell into a cave there in the Death Valley, found a similar thing: mummies, treasure, miners, evidence of ancient mining. And it's very similar to what the Grand Canyon was experiencing. So I look at the West a little differently. People say the West dried up after the Ice Age because it got warm. Why did it get warm? It doesn't make sense. But when you see how quickly they drained, it makes sense that in a seismically active place with, the Walker Plate, the Pacific Plate, all this activity, all it takes, and it's happened before, you get an earthquake and a lake drains. It goes down. So that's what made it hot. We had no more water. So that's kind of the premise of ghost hunting theories. Is just I use both logic and science and just common sense and question things that don't line up. Like those artifacts they find that aren't from caveman never could have made a watch. But why do we find it? Let's figure out what was going on.
It seems like there's got to be a correlation to me, because now, the rage is UAPs. They're all underwater vehicles. And we know the Great Lakes are a hotbed for this. Off the coast of California, hotbed for these UFO activities. So why wouldn't we look back a few thousand years and say, okay, well, where did there used to be water? The Grand Stinking Canyon. You think there's probably some leftover artifacts there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Death Valley is a great example. There were several very, Lake Manly and Lake Panamint. There were big lakes in there, and it makes perfect sense. It was also an ideal mining area, which is another big key. Somebody, and the natives here in America, like Wisconsin, they found these very ancient mines and huge tools that the people were using. And they asked the tribes, and they said, no, that was the people from the north, the big people. They came down and mined. They were doing that before we got here. We weren't miners. And so we have to ask for inconsistencies. I originally wanted to be an archaeologist because of my upbringing and my curiosity, but I wanted to be an Egyptologist because the pyramids were really perplexing, and our textbooks were not explaining it. 20,000 workers carved perfect stones and moved. No. And I get upset because Egypt can claim it. But it's sort of like if you move into a house that somebody else built, and then you say, "Oh no, I built it. This is mine." But you can't explain how it was built. You can't explain what tools were used. It makes no sense. And yet we still keep playing that game. Yeah, Egyptians built it. No, they moved in. They moved into an empty house, and it was that way in Teotihuacan in Mexico. Yeah, exactly. The Aztecs even said, look, they'd been abandoned hundreds of years. We don't know what they used them for. We used them for what we thought they could be used for. But they can't tell you. They can't tell you how it was mined, why there's mercury underneath it, why there's mica in the surface of the buildings. They don't know. It's magic.
And one thing I always come back to with a lot of these big sites is, where the bleep did everybody go? It's the same thing with Teotihuacan. You want to go to Cahokia, even down into Poverty Point in Louisiana. There's these big mythical sites, and everybody just said, we're just going to move. Like, people don't just do that. That's just absurd. It's like New York City going, hey, we're good. We're just going to take a couple years off and disappear. That's ridiculous.
Kind of reminds me when they go, yeah, the dinosaurs were wiped out by a meteor. Oh no, dinosaurs are now birds. Sorry. Yeah. Which one? But yeah, it's
It's wild.
I kind of go back to the Younger Dryas, when
Mm-hmm.
after the Ice Age, when everything was in the melty lakes and the oceans rose and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the flood myths, I think, really were describing civilization had gone to a point of advancement, and the experiment was done. That was it. Let's just get rid of it. So all of that is sitting there, and it was another culture. Did they look like us? I don't know. Look at their drawings. See what you think. But
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, all of that was gone, and so we have the remnants of it, and whoever's living there claims it, that it's theirs. We ran into that with the Florida bog people. They found all these bog mummies,
Yeah.
and
I
they
forgot.
gave them to the local tribe. And then once they did the DNA sampling of them, they're European. So just because you live there doesn't mean you invented it.
Yeah. I mean, even the famous Kennewick man from Washington
Yes.
State, the DNA on that was like, yeah, it's not native. Sorry. And then, of course, they immediately concrete over the site, whisk away the body, and we're all like,
Yes.
okay, that sounds good.
Isn't that like that murder where suddenly they had the person, they had him burned, they just put him away, like they're ashes now. You can't examine the body. It's
Yeah.
any way they can get rid of this stuff and squirrel it away. They do. There was a fight over Spirit Cave in Nevada for a long time between the tribe and the BLM, basically. They said, look, let's solve this. Let's get DNA. Let's find out. We're not going to let we're not going to hand it to you. Your tribe wasn't even living here then. You're a newer tribe in this area. And eventually they had to go to court. They had to fight for that one.
I mean, it's nuts to me, but it's every site now. I've told people this all the time. Any site of any importance is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So technically, it's not anybody's anymore. It's, everything, every site that we just talked about today, guaranteed UNESCO World Heritage Site. Whether it's North America, Göbekli Tepe over there, Old World, Giza Pyramids, it's a World Heritage Site. So in other words, it's protected, quote unquote, and you can't research it.
Oh, absolutely. I think the only really good thing happening with the internet right now that's really helpful is, of course, immediately people can share things. That's great. But in my research now and then, I come across something that like the universities, they say, go ahead and scan everything, put it up on the internet. So they in their university site, they'll scan anything, and no, they don't tell the people scanning them, oh, don't show that one, and so it'll get up there, and then I'll post about it, and then all of a sudden it's it's taken down and you can't find it.
Yeah.
So I've learned to immediately disperse the information immediately. Everybody copy it, everybody take it. Here it is, it's free, just take it. But there's one in Arizona. There was a cave in Casa Grande, and they had this amazing, beautiful pictures of this giant skeleton in the cave, and its skull is very enormous. The bones are enormous. There's other bones mixed in with it that look more our size. And it was a beautiful, clear picture of this thing. And when I go, and that had been scanned, put up, nobody thought anything of it. It's a skeleton in a cave. What they didn't think is, that's a freaking big skeleton compared to the human ones. So I got the picture, and so then I thought, okay, I'm going to look into this. Can I go there? Can I go to that cave? Can I see it? That whole area is cordoned off, and they say there's some special owl that they're protecting there.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so fenced in, high fences. No, can't go there. So, they have their ways of doing it. So I have a few researchers. I have one that's way into his late 80s who was in with a lot of different tribes, and one of the tribes took him to ancient giant skeletons in a cave. He climbed down this old ladder that the natives had built, and it was near Pyramid Lake. And he went down in there, and these things were standing up against the wall. They were mummified, they were dry, and they were enormous in size. And the elder that took him there said, no pictures, do not take anything, do not come back here, never tell anyone where this is. They thought it was a very sacred place. They didn't know what the heck these things were. Maybe they were some great ancestor or something, but no one should see it. So he kept the secret. 25 years. When the elder died, he said, I know a place that has giant mummies, but I'm not supposed to go there. So over time, he started giving me the clues as to where it was. And all I could think of is we need somebody to go and live. I mean, you don't want to start in the middle of something. You want to literally say, we're going into this cave. Let's see what we find, and go in the cave. Film it live. Have the date, have the time, have the people with you. Show the way that you respectfully look at, photograph, or measure things, but don't mess with anything. They're all clues. Not that the Smithsonian is necessarily going to care about how it was arranged. They just want it gone. But then you call on the authorities. You say, I found this in a cave. When they arrive, you tell them how you found it. You explain you haven't touched anything. And then you get a business card, some kind of card or phone number from whoever's in charge of this case. And you haunt them to their death. The rest of their life, haunt them. Where is it?
Unintended.
What happened to it? So you show how it goes missing. Because people say, oh, that's such an easy, yeah, right, Smithsonian stole it. Well, prove it. That's how you prove it. You stay within the law because you shouldn't tamper with ancient finds. And I'm respectful of that. Don't mess with it. But you can look at it, you can photograph it, and you can hold up a tape measure. And then you can call the people that need to come in and give it to the native tribe, right? But we want to follow. Where did it go? After we gave you this find, where is it? What did you find out? And you're going to hear crickets chirp.
And it's wild. A lot of people, when they think of this kind of stuff, they immediately think of the big bases. It's Area 51, it's Groom Lake, and all this stuff. But the truth is, so much is hidden on military bases and properties for good reason. So nobody will ever have access to
the location is key.
There's, I mean, just thinking locally here, not too far from me in Fort Bragg, there's an abandoned Rockefeller mansion on Fort Bragg. It's still there, but you just will never see it. And it's true of, I could reel off a couple other ones real close by, but Camp Lejeune, same thing. There's no mansion there, but there's a swath of property. Again, a lot of stuff there from what I've been told, but you won't ever find it. You're not going to get on base and go metal detecting, and they're not going to let you anywhere out of your car, basically. So, so much is hidden in plain sight that we're just never going to see.
Oh, true. Yeah, I had a mentor in the oil and gas business, and he said before he was in the industry, he did trucking. He would truck supplies for oil and gas. And he said he was called into Nevada to an ancient mine there that's been closed a very long time. And he pulled up, and military people had him taking the truck with these huge water pumps. They were meant to pump massive amounts of water. And so he had to back the truck into this cavern, basically, and this mine. And then they unloaded everything. But the security was so intense that, it was get out of the truck, come outside, wait, and we'll bring the truck out when we're done. They just really didn't want him to know anything. And in searching about this mine, it hasn't had any activity. There shouldn't be any water in it unless there's some underground water. There's nobody mining in it. There's nobody using it. Certainly not the military. So what are they doing down there? Well, what are they pumping the water out of? What are they looking for?
And the sad truth is, we're probably not going to find out.
All the researchers that have recently moved on to the next level, that have passed on, all I can think of is now you have all the answers.
Yeah.
We're not going to have them here. And we're not going to satisfy anyone with the answers here. I like the mind puzzle of it. And I like to think that the universe is just more than what our 5 crappy senses can, and what our horrible history books can tell us. There's an agenda behind what I call the unholy trinity, but educational, religion, and government. The 3 of them have a lot in the game. They got skin in the game, so they have to control how we see the world and how big our little box is. We're allowed to stay in that box. Here's the size of the box. Don't look outside the box. Don't poke a hole in the box. Just believe what we're telling you and follow us and just be gullible creatures. As long as you're pliable and you're a lemming, they can control you. and it would ruin a lot of, and I know religion's going to have to deal with that too. And I think religion has evolved enough that they're not threatened by the concept of other beings, that other creations. I don't think that's, I guess they had their own Christs, or maybe the same Christ went to all of them. I don't know, but they'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah. This might be a good question at the end here, because it kind of does connect all these dots. And it's sad to me that I think humans have, we know they do, attention span wise, we're shorter than a goldfish now. And I think social media has only made it worse. But sadly, everybody's got an expiration date, hopefully a natural one. But there's a litany of deaths that, hey, that's crazy. Hey, what happened to, and then sadly people just move on. It's a news story for 30 seconds. And then it becomes, nobody thinks about Michael Hastings anymore. Nobody thinks about Gary Webb anymore. It's so sad. But what's your take on all these dead scientists, researchers, and the like? I mean, Neil McCaskill, one of the obvious ones, is kind of the bigger name in the last few years, just because he had so much credibility as far as degrees and connections to the deep state, or connections to the deep projects, if you will. I don't know if it's even deep state, but he's just one footnote in the tens of 12 beyond that we've seen the last couple of years. What's your take on that?
Well, there's different things going on. I was just talking to somebody the other day who was connecting with Bigfoot, and they believe that Bigfoot would help them move to a higher level. And I said, I think you got to be real careful what you wish for. Not that Bigfoot are bad, but they have kind of a hazing. If you want to move on, you have to prove that you can be a martyr, that you can handle. They will give you cancer. They will give you trials, financial issues. They'll give you relationship issues. They'll throw everything in your path they can to see if you're actually ready to move on. So in a way, there's a sort of martyrdom in all this, where we're being tasked with, would you pursue this? Not like, who would have thought of these scientists before if they hadn't have died? Mm-hmm. Now they're martyrs. Now we want to know. We want answers. So it's a way to kind of push us, instead of to hide knowledge, or some foreign government, or our own government, or the New World Order, or whoever in Illuminati, whatever you want. Instead of that, let's look at it in a whole different way. If people in the industry weren't dying, we wouldn't have noticed. It's like 9/11. We didn't think about what we took on airplanes until that happened, and suddenly we're very aware. So, that's. I think we have to look at the martyr aspect of this. Whatever reason that they passed on, they left a legacy of questions. And they are the very people who would say, please try to answer those. Mm-hmm. Continue it. Yeah.
Man, that's a pretty darn good point. I never thought of it that way. That's true. I would never know, McCaskill if it wasn't in the news for at least 30 seconds. And then I think all the people like you and I went, what the? He was involved in what?
There. See, it comes out, it gets paraded. Yeah. So, I know it's getting a lot of attention and it's titillating to some, but I think it's a really good reminder of, let's really look at what they were doing. And did you know the government was studying this? And, let's wake up. It's kind of like if you were in a long marriage and you let your spouse handle the checkbook. You had no idea what was going on. And then one day you opened it up and went, oh, where's that money going? We need to start asking, where's that information going? What's happening out there? Where's our tax dollars going?
And just how much technology is out there that we don't know about. I mean, that's the $1 million question, I think. Why the bleep are we still driving, gasoline-powered cars if we can just interstellar travel, if we can hop in a wormhole and shoot to another dimension?
Our priorities are a mess. I mean, look, the time we got the telephone, the time we got the car, now we have cell phones, and now you have, these wear eyeglasses that have a camera in them, but we still are driving around with a combustive engine. So, why haven't we advanced? I think it is major industries do have a factor. The oil industry is certainly not going to want to come up with anything else, and they will take your patents. I think there's reality to some of that. But we've also lost a lot of other industries. We don't have men delivering milk anymore. We don't have coal chutes in our houses. We managed to find new industries to work in. So we just have to evolve. And I think we're just being watched. Every now and then the aliens toss something at us and say, I wonder what they'll do with that.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, is that consciousness thing where people are waking up and going, hey, why am I working this 9 to 5? Why am I paying these taxes for what exactly? They're pulling money out of thin air, so I can pull money out of it. It's so silly.
Well, look at all a lot of my retired friends, they have off-grid compounds now. I mean, they're in their 60s building solar units and living off the land. And I think that's awesome. We've become slaves to the cable bill and, having your car washed at a service and getting your nails and toes done. And, it just tacks on more and more. And why? Because we're lemmings. We think we're supposed to need those things.
That's true. I hope that's part of the consciousness that we're going to wake up from soon and go, hey,
We are getting shaken awake. I think that's why we are seeing people doing the off-grid thing and the nomadic living. They're like, no, we've maxed out. We've maxed out. We can't do this. We want to actually live a life.
That's the truth.
Not a virtual one.
Yes, not a flipping, got my Google goggles on or whatever. Like an actual real existence would be nice.
Yeah, I know, really.
And well, Sharon, it's been such a pleasure. We got to do this again because I don't think we even scratched the surface. I got so much more to talk to you about, but I don't want to take up too much of your time today. Give us the great site that everybody can find you. Plug your books. I know you got a lot going on. We didn't even get into the new stuff you're doing. So however you want to close out here, we got so much to come back to. So.
Well, I've relocated from Arizona to Georgia now, so I've got a whole new Eastern Seaboard to explore and things to cover and to do, and it's just going to take on a crazy rate of speed. But I'm also, because I am a screenwriter and a producer, we're in pre-production for a Western that I wrote, and I've got several other movies after that are coming up. One of them is a horror film, and it does involve ghosts, so I get to use my quirky way of seeing things. But I do love autumn and Halloween and all that stuff. But you can find, if you're interested in anything of any curiosity, if you just have a curious scientific mind or a spiritual mind or a spooky, dark, and gothic mind, whatever you're into, it's ghosthuntingtheories.com. And I have lots of books out, and I tell you, when my films are released theatrically, I will definitely showcase those.
Absolutely. I'm putting the site on the screen for everybody right now, ghosthuntingtheories.com, and you can find all of her stuff there. I'm thinking you can get the books there. You can reach out to you. You can probably check out those premieres coming up, I hope.
Oh, yeah. I'll always, especially when the horror one comes out, because it's the horror film I always wanted to see. And being an insider, I know exactly what we need. So. Yeah.
Amen to that. Please stop the remakes. No more remakes. Give me something good.
No regurgitating
I know you're not doing
anything.
That. I'm saying that to the universe.
Yeah,
Please stop the remakes.
Honestly, I feel like I just had to roll up my sleeves and go, okay, enough. How many renditions of, just because they like the first one doesn't mean they need 80 versions of it.
Yeah. I loved the first few Amityville horrors. We're on like number 12 or something. I don't want any more.
Yeah. Jaws 1 and 2 were okay, and then we had to go 3D, and these things never. Oh, it's terrible.
That's the truth. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sharon. If you'll stick around for about 30 seconds, I'll say goodbye to you at the end here.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much again. Thank you for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Indeed. All right, folks. Well, goodness gracious, we got so much more to talk to. Well, hopefully we'll get Sharon back on to get in some of this other stuff. In case you missed anything today, remember you can pause, you can rewind, you can do all that good stuff. That's what I would recommend doing. As I always say, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So try to get out there, do your part, make a difference. And I'll be seeing you sooner than later in the Anomic Age.
Thank you for listening to The Anomic Age, a John Age project. For past shows, further info, and to comment, go to anomicage.com. That's ANOMICAGE.com. Till next time, thank you for listening to The Anomic Age.